part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
Hey, this is Chase Smith, founder and CEO of Press Play Podcast. You may have heard me on the Orange is Oranger Cleveland Browns podcast with Jeremy Powell, now wonderfully hosted by Holly Wetzel, Cavs on the Break NBA podcast with Sam Amico, or my own podcast, the Chase Smith Podcast. I wanted to take a few moments to talk to you about a brand new subscription-based podcast we're offering this football season, the Press Play Sports Podcast. This premium podcast feed will send all of the sports podcasts offered on the Press Play Podcast Network to one central feed. Yes, you can still follow and subscribe to all of our individual shows for free on every podcast platform. But if you wanted to consolidate your podcast feed and listen to them all in one location, the Press Play Sports Podcast is for you. I'm talking the Oranges and Oranger Browns podcast with Holly Wetzel and Jeremy Powell, Red Guy and Rhoda, Sable Brothers on the Baseline, Cavs on the Break, the Dennis Maniloff Show, the Ball Card Show, the Premium Fantasy Podcast, a Swing in a Tribe MLB podcast, and the Tim and Shipe Show, a college football podcast, all in one feed. All 9 of our sports shows curated into one single podcast feed. Out the door, you're looking at $5.36 a month after tax. That's $5.36, just about the cost of a drink at Starbucks. And this is only offered on Apple Podcasts. You can't get this anywhere else. It's an Apple Podcast exclusive. Just go to the search bar and search Press Play Sports. It'll come up and you can subscribe from there. We're excited to offer this consolidated, curated sports feed for you to enjoy. And as always, thank you so much for listening and your support.
Welcome to the latest edition of the Dennis Maniloff Show, part of the Press Play Podcast Network. Producer for this episode is Jordan Powell, my first opportunity to work with him, and I'm very pleased and very honored to do so. I'm thinking about the kingpin of Press Play Podcast Network, Chase Smith, as he convalesces, as he recovers from his illness. So we wish him and nothing but the best. Of course, pray for Chase. He will be fine. He's a bionic man, but always thinking about Chase. I come to you in a bad mood, in a foul mood, in a hacked off mood. I am the Grinch before he went down to Whoville and had his heart transformed. I am furious with what took place in LA when the Cleveland Browns visited the Chargers and lost 47-42. I'm going to give you some numbers, and then I'm going to ask you and me, heck, I'll do it now. How in the world did this team that put up these numbers lose? 25 first downs, 531 total yards, 7.8 yards per play, a 300-yard passer, 230 yards rushing, 0 turnovers, and 36 minutes and 28 seconds of possession time. How did that team lose? Well, we know the answer. That team did lose. It was the Cleveland Browns, and it's really a very disappointing defeat. The Browns fall to 3-2 on the season. Their 2 losses are to opponents that they very well could have to get through in order to achieve their goal of the Super Bowl and presumably winning the Super Bowl. But getting to the Super Bowl, you're going to have to go through Kansas City in all likelihood. They lost to them in KC. You might have to get through the Chargers and very possibly. You lost to them in LA, in California. So these aren't just losses. These are bad losses and come from ahead losses too, because the Browns were in control the majority of the minutes against Kansas City in the opener and blew that one. And here against the Chargers, the Browns had plenty of opportunities to salt the game away and failed to do so. And come away with a 47-42 defeat. At first blush, when you look at this, you say, well, any team that gives up 47 points deserves to lose. And obviously the defense is the problem. Okay, I'll go along with that to a large extent. The Browns defense just wasn't anywhere near good enough. I was singing the praises of Joe Woods after last week when the Browns went to Minnesota and held the Vikings to 7 points. And in their past 25 possessions, the entire game against Minnesota, the entire game the previous week against Chicago, and the last 2 possessions against Houston, they had allowed something like a total of 330 yards and 13 points. And so they deserved a lot of praise. Well, that defense went out west and just got carved by the LA Chargers and the talented second-year quarterback Justin Herbert. Chargers numbers, 68 plays, the exact same amount as Cleveland, 493 total yards. They had the same number of drives, 381 yards passing, 112 yards rushing, 4 for 4 in the red zone, turned the ball over once on a fumble, only possessed the ball for 23 minutes and 32 seconds, and yet managed 47 points. That's inexcusable. So when I have to list the culprits, when I have to assign percentage of culpability, there is no question that the defense is first on the list. Because no matter what I'm about to say about the offense could say, look, we gave you 42 points and you still didn't win. I mean, all you need to do is hold the Chargers to 41 and we win this game. The offense can say to the defense. So, yes, I totally understand that the defense was ultimately the problem. It's also important to mention how banged up the Cleveland Browns were. I'm not using this as an excuse. I'm simply articulating it as a matter of reality. No left tackle Jed Wills to start the game. No wide receiver Jarvis Landry. No cornerback Greg Newsome. During the game, Jack Conklin out, the right tackle. Jadeveon Clowney, game day scratch, did not play at all. That was fun while it lasted. Jadeveon played the first 4 games of the season and before the injury bug hit him, and now he's out. Greedy Williams was playing injured. Played hard, did best he could, but he was playing injured. Denzel Ward injured his neck during the game. His absence was felt. So either pregame, entering the game, or during the game, injuries to Jed Wills, Jack Conklin, Jarvis Landry, Jadeveon Clowney, Denzel Ward, Greedy Williams, Greg Newsome. And I'm sure a couple other guys were banged up too. I think McDowell was banged up at some point. Various injuries to various guys, but those were some of the notables. And it's very difficult to overcome those types of losses, especially when you're going on the road and especially when you're playing a talented team, such as the Los Angeles Chargers. So I totally understand where somebody would say, hey, what about the gritty, gutty Browns? They had all these injuries and they still managed to go toe-to-toe with the Chargers. Okay, but that's not where I am, though. That's not where I am mentally. Mentally, that's not where I am psychologically. I thought that this season we would have put to bed the moral victories. I thought that this season we would have put an end to the participation trophies for the gritty, gutty Browns who tried their best to overcome injuries and had all sorts of stuff stacked against them, and they still made it a good game. No, that stuff is done as far as I'm concerned. If you have Super Bowl aspirations, then these kind of losses stink. These kind of losses are inexcusable, and these kind of losses don't come with them participation trophies or pats on the back or attaboys or moral victories. The bottom line is this. the Cleveland Browns through 5 weeks have played 2 quality teams and lost to them both. Now, you say, well, what about the Bears? They're not that bad. They went to Vegas and beat the Vegas Raiders, and they're now 3-2. And the Vikings, they beat the Lions. So what are they now? 2-3. And the Vikings could easily have more victories than 2. I understand that. So the Vikings and the Bears, kind of middling teams, but I'm not going to put them as quality teams until I see the season play out and until they put up a decent win-loss record. Then I'll say, all right, let's go back and look at the Browns schedule. And, oh, by the way, they happen to play a good team in the Bears or a good team in the Vikings. For now, they're not. They're just middling to mediocre to bad teams. The 2 quality opponents, you lost to them both if you're the Cleveland Browns. And you lost to them in gut-busting fashion. So that's why I'm hacked off. And that's why I think Browns fans should be ticked off. We should move past the excuses. We should graduate from the excuses where we try to make each other feel better because our little engine that could was a survivor out there and hung in there. No more. And I'll say this too. One of the reasons that I have not wanted to crown the Browns like a lot of people have is games like this and games like the Kansas City one. Entering the season, we kept hearing about how amazing this Browns team is. Oh, look at the additions, and on paper, incredible. Oh, my gosh, this team is awesome. And I said, yeah, it looks good on paper, but I'm going to wait and see before I crown this team. In other words, I'm not going to say they're better than the Baltimore Ravens until they finish ahead of the Ravens in the AFC North. I'm not going to put them ahead of the Kansas City Chiefs until I see the Browns beat the Chiefs in a game that matters with this current crew. The Barry, Stefanski, Mayfield crew and throw in DePodesta there. I'm not going to crown them over the Buffalo Bills until I see them finish with a better record than the Bills and or beat the Bills in the playoffs. I'm not going to put them ahead of, the Los Angeles Chargers now. Because the Chargers are good. They went into Kansas City and beat the Chiefs. And now the Chargers are 4-1. So as much excitement as there was about the Browns heading into the season, I'm not saying there shouldn't be still, but the enthusiasm needs to be tempered with the reality that this team is just 3-2 when it should be 4-1 or easily could be 4-1. And you could make a case for 5-0, but guess what? They're 3-2. So that's a problem. And I wouldn't say sickens me, but it really bothers me that they are 0-2 against 2 AFC playoff-worthy teams. And obviously with the Chiefs, they're more than playoff-worthy. They're, been to the last 2 Super Bowls, won one of them, then lost last year to Tampa Bay. So they're the big dog on the block, if you will. But now the Chargers are on the rise, and they have the head-to-head with over Cleveland, and they're 4-1. So that's why this loss stings in multiple ways. I begrudgingly do this because I try to be a nice guy every once in a while to the opponent. I will say congratulations to Brandon Staley, the coach of the Chargers, for the start that he is off to as an NFL head coach. His Chargers are 4-1 in his rookie season as an NFL head coach. And the reason I single out Brandon Staley is not long ago, that same young man was the defensive coordinator and secondaries coach of the John Carroll Blue Streaks. So, and I'm not knocking the Blue Streaks when I say this, but it's incredible to think that in 2013, 15, and 16, Brandon Staley was an assistant coach for the Division III John Carroll Blue Streaks. And now he's the head coach of the Chargers. He's being lauded as a rock star in LA. He has an incredibly talented second-year quarterback, and he's doing great things. So begrudgingly, props to Chargers head coach, Perry, Ohio native Brandon Staley. All right, when we return to the Dennis Maniloff Show, part of the Press Play Podcast Network, I will identify where everything went wrong for the Cleveland Browns and ask rhetorically, why did it go wrong?
Hi, this is Maria Gincola with Mindful MMJ Ohio. Did you know that medical marijuana has been legal in Ohio since 2016? If you have one of 25 qualifying medical conditions, you can obtain your medical marijuana card today. The most common conditions are chronic pain, including migraines and back or joint pain, PTSD, fibromyalgia, spinal cord disease or injury, and cancer. If you or someone you know is interested in learning more or to find out if you qualify, visit mindfulmmjohio.com and fill out the short pre-qualification form. The process of finding a physician, filling out paperwork, obtaining medical records, and scheduling an appointment seems like it would be a daunting process for most. But, lucky for you, Mindful MMJ Ohio will help you every step of the way to make the process quick and easy. In most cases, we can approve a qualified patient within 24 hours. And the visit is virtual, so you don't even have to leave home. So what are you waiting for? Visit mindfulmmjohio.com today. That's mindfulmmjohio.com. Let us help you be more mindful of your health and find a natural way to find relief from your symptoms.
The R&R podcast going to be rocking and rolling with you because football season is underway. College, Ohio State, the Power Fives, the MAC, the Browns. Michael Regai, are you ready to rock and roll with some football?
Kenny, I've been ready. This is our time of year. This is what R&R is all about. We're going to be with you every week. Kenny just said it. Browns, NFL, Ohio State centric. So you got to stay with us all fall and winter long here on R&R.
That's right. The Regai and Rhoda podcast coming to you here on the Press Play Podcast Network. Subscribe now and don't miss a show.
Hey everyone, I'm Holly Wetzel.
And I'm Jeremy Powell.
And we are your hosts of The Orange is Oranger, a Cleveland Browns podcast on the Press Play Podcast Network. We give you all the dog pound coverage that you'll need each week to get you ready for kickoff and beyond.
Don't miss our breakdowns of each week's matchups, game recaps, and any and all news out of Berea to feed your Browns appetite. As we all know, Holly, dogs got to eat.
That's right, Jeremy. Hit that subscribe button and never miss an episode of the Orange is Oranger Browns podcast on the Press Play Podcast Network.
Hey everybody, it's Sam Amico from Cavs on the Break NBA podcast. Be sure to give us a listen for all your Cleveland Cavaliers recaps, analysis, breakdowns, draft talk, free agency. The list goes on and on. Give us a listen, Cavs on the Break NBA podcast.
Welcome back to the Dennis Maniloff Show, part of the Press Play Podcast Network. Producer extraordinaire Jordan Powell and I are working together for the first time. In the opening segment, I got out of my system the good numbers that the Cleveland Browns put up because I didn't want to be accused of doing nothing but dogging the Browns. So I had to get the positive stuff out of the way first. But as I move into this segment, to me, when I identify what lost this game, it's pretty easy, and I'm sure I'm not the only one who sees this. The final two possessions for the Cleveland Browns lost the game. All right, they were up 42-35, and the Chargers answered with a touchdown to make it 42-41. The Chargers missed the extra point, and that kept the score at 42-41 Cleveland. Cleveland gets the ball with 3 minutes and 15 seconds left in the fourth quarter with a 1-point lead. And the following takes place. A bad kickoff return, number one. Only gets to the 14. Anthony Schwartz returned it only 11 yards on a kickoff return. That's inexcusable. And I'm not just saying it was Schwartz's fault, blocking as well. So they're in a hole to begin with. 1st and 10 at the Cleveland 14. And Schwartz had to return it because it was inside the, in the field of play. So it wasn't kicked into the end zone. He wasn't trying to be a hero. But he got engulfed, so they only got it to the 14. 1st and 10 at the Cleveland 14. Kareem Hunt, right tackle for 1 yard. Timeout Chargers at 3:01. 2nd and 9 at the Cleveland 15. Mayfield incomplete. Deep left to a covered Higgins. 3rd and 9 at the Cleveland 15. Kareem Hunt, left tackle for 3 yards. 4th and 6 at the Cleveland 18. They had to punt. Unless my eyes were deceiving me, in that series, there was no Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb was not on the field in that series. That doesn't make any sense to me, okay? No matter what you're trying to accomplish, Nick Chubb needs to be on the field with the money on the line. 21 carries for 161 yards and 1 touchdown for Chubb. Long of 52. I know he's not a receiving threat. He had 1 catch for 9 yards. He's not known as a receiving threat, and Kareem Hunt is. But Nick Chubb has to be on the field, and I don't think he was in that possession. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think I'm right. Just a mind-blowing 3 plays that do nothing, and the Browns have to punt. When all they really need is a couple of first downs to ice the game. And they go nowhere. Put the ball in Kareem Hunt's hands. And especially, too, on 3rd and 9, you're going to run Kareem Hunt off tackle? You're not going to throw the ball? Why not? And here's the other question I have for this possession and then the one I'm going to talk about next. Where was number 13 on the Cleveland Browns? Where was Odell Beckham Jr.? He was out there, but yet he wasn't there, if you know what I mean. He was invisible. How in the world can you not target Odell Beckham Jr. with one of those 3 plays? When you have a 1-point lead, you're trying to get first downs. Odell is supposed to be a star. Baker Mayfield is supposed to be a star in waiting. He's the number 1 overall pick in 2018. He's, waiting to see if he can get an extension. There's money. There's tons of money on the line. Okay, now's the time for us to see Baker Mayfield show what he can do and show why it's worth pumping however many millions of dollars a year into him. Well, guess what? 3 and out, and you have to punt. But all is not lost, though, because you still have the lead, and there's still time on the clock. Well, the Scottish Hammer, Jamie Gillan, only gets off a 42-yard punt. I say only because nowadays punters hit the ball, it seems like 55, 60 yards in climate-controlled conditions. And Gillan didn't have a very good punt, and the return put the ball at the Cleveland 48. So that 3 and out was even worse because of the bad punt by Gillan and the return by the Chargers. Chargers 1st and 10 at the Cleveland 48. They move the ball down the field with ease. Another defensive breakdown, especially on first down and the pass to Cook on the left side. They go down the field. Eckler tries to, he slides out of bounds or slides inbounds at the 2, and they were going to seemingly set up for the field goal, but then Eckler didn't get down on the next run and was pushed into the end zone by the Browns defense so that the Browns could get the ball back. Fine. I had no problem with that at all. You knew what the Chargers were trying to do. Eckler didn't get down quickly enough, so Browns defenders pushed him into the end zone, forced the Chargers to score because the Browns knew that at the very worst, they were going to be able to tie the game with a TD and an extra point. Well, the good news for Cleveland was that after the touchdown by Eckler, the 3-yard run, Vizcaino missed his second. Tristan Vizcaino missed his second extra point. So it's now 47-42. Excuse me. No, he didn't miss his second. He had already missed his second. They had to go for 2 in order to compensate for the 2 misses by Vizcaino, and they didn't get it on Eckler's run. So they don't get the 2-point. It's a 5-point game. Once again, the Cleveland Browns offense has the game in its hands. Down 5. Granted, not a lot of time. Minute 31 is not a lot of time, but it's an eternity for the great ones. It's an eternity for the coaches who are detail-oriented and super smart, as we know Kevin Stefanski to be. 131 is a long time for competent quality teams. And I would submit the Browns are a competent quality team. So I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, they had to hurry everything. 1st and 10 at the Cleveland 25. Mayfield to Higgins for 6. Didn't get out of bounds. 2nd and 4 at the Cleveland 31. Mayfield to Hunt for 3. Didn't get out of bounds, didn't get the first. Mayfield to Hunt for 2. First down. Timeout Chargers. The problem is there's only 41 seconds left. The Cleveland Browns, in their first 3 plays of what you're almost positive is going to be your final possession, when you only have 91 seconds, they wasted, how many was it? 50 seconds on 3 plays that gained 11 yards. Absolutely inexcusable for a team that is supposed to be good, for a team that is supposed to be Super Bowl caliber. You cannot, in your less than 2-minute drill, move the ball 11 yards in your first 3 plays in 50 seconds. Notice whose name I haven't called yet in this possession either. Oh, that's right, Odell Beckham Jr. Keep that in mind as we continue the possession. 41 seconds left. 1st and 10 at the 36 of Cleveland. Mayfield to Njoku for 10. 1st and 10 at the Cleveland 46. Mayfield spike. 2nd and 10 at the Cleveland 46. Mayfield deep right to Donovan Peoples-Jones. Incomplete. 3rd and 10 at the Cleveland 46. Mayfield deep left to Hollywood Higgins. Incomplete. 4th and 10 at the Cleveland 46. 14 seconds left. Bomb into the end zone. Players tripping all over each other. Looked like David Njoku got interfered with. Oh, well, they're not going to call that in a Hail Mary situation. Ball drops incomplete. And it actually, when I went back and looked at the replay, it was they tripped on each other. The Chargers player tripped and then fell into Njoku. But you're not going to get that call anyway. Bottom line, incomplete. And no Odell Beckham Jr. in the area, as I could see, and I'm going to ask Jordan this. Jordan, the last play of the game for the Browns, did you see any sign of 13 in the air near the ball?
I did not. I saw a lot of people on the ground. I don't know if he fell down on the way to the end zone because everyone else was on the ground, but I didn't see him.
Yeah. And I'm pretty sure I'm right that in the proximity of the ball, there was no number 13 Odell Beckham Jr. So you're going to tell me in the final 2 possessions of the game, with everything on the table, your elite wide receiver, made even more important because his buddy Jarvis Landry is out, your elite number 1 wide receiver, Odell Beckham Jr., doesn't get a sniff in the final two possessions. I don't think Baker Mayfield even looked his way in the final two possessions. There was one play, and I believe it was the second down throw of the last possession, where Mayfield was trying to go deep to Donovan Peoples-Jones, and Peoples-Jones was double covered. You could clearly see Odell Beckham Jr. was as open as Denny's. He was wide open around the 35-yard line of the Chargers. Would have caught the ball, and I know that some of the, at least one of the defenders peeled toward Jones when he saw the ball was going to Jones and could have conceivably been right there at Odell, but Odell still was open enough to catch the ball with room to spare. I'm thinking at a minimum, Odell Beckham Jr. could have caught that ball and been out of bounds at the Chargers' 30-yard line with about 20 seconds to go, 20 to 22 seconds left. Well, actually a little less than that. A little more than that, maybe around 25 seconds. Instead, Mayfield's chucking it deep to a double-covered Donovan Peoples-Jones. Anybody understand what's wrong with that? Yeah, of course you do. Why is it that on other teams, the great players impact the games at the end of the games? The great receivers on other teams are going to catch the ball when the money's on the line. I don't care how many people are paying attention to them. I don't care if they're getting doubled or tripled or what have you. I don't care if the quarterback's under siege. The best receivers in the game typically catch the balls when the money's on the line, except in Cleveland. When the Cleveland Browns desperately needed Odell Beckham Jr., he wasn't anywhere to be found. Now, am I blaming it all on Odell? No. Because I'm saying to the Bake Show, what are you doing, Bake? The best receiver you have on the field is number 13. The guy who makes all these amazing catches in the pregame, and he's got his headphones on when he's snatching backhanders with one hand, and he's tiptoeing along the sideline. Oh, yes, the pregame MVP. Well, where is he when the money's on the line, when the real money's on the line, when the game's on the line? Where was Odell? And if he was open, as I thought he was on at least one play, where the heck is Baker Mayfield? Not throwing him the ball. And why isn't Kevin Stefanski running something for Odell in the final two possessions of the game? So, yes, Baker had a good game statistically. Okay. And I'll even read the stats. 23 of 32, 305 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks, just 1 sack. Yeah, statistically, he had a good game. But what is it that those of us who, even though we love Baker, are a little bit skeptical about? What have we been talking about? We want to see Baker Mayfield thrive late against a quality opponent. And since he's been drafted, those situations have come and gone largely unanswered by Baker Mayfield. Yes, he got in a shootout with Lamar Jackson last year, a quality Ravens team. Yes, I grant you that, no question. And he might have had another one in there where he was good late against a quality team. But already twice this season, Baker Mayfield, with Kevin Stefanski calling the plays, has had the ball in his hands with a chance to win. Either come back to win, as he did in Kansas City after the Chiefs chased the Browns down, took the lead. Ball was still in Mayfield's hands. Chance to take it down the field and win it. He didn't do it. Yeah, he got hit as he was trying to throw it away. He got picked, but you know what? He left it on the field there. I mean, the result showed that the Kansas City Chiefs won, and Mayfield failed to come back that final time against the Chiefs. Even though he had done a really good job overall in that game, he left you wanting because at the end he wasn't able to finish. Same thing here. The Baker defenders, the Baker apologists, those who like Baker, such as I wouldn't call myself an apologist, but I will defend Baker. Yeah, okay, we can point to how he had a good game statistically, and he's playing with a partially torn left labrum, and a lot of quarterbacks aren't nearly as tough as Baker Mayfield. Yes, points stipulated, mega props to Baker. But here was another opportunity to rescue his team against a good team on the road, and he came up short. So that's a problem. Would I like to have the utmost confidence in Baker Mayfield that he's going to be the guy for sure going forward and he deserves a monster extension? Yeah, I'd love that. I mean, what other choice do we have? I mean, I like Case Keenum as a professional, but I don't want to put my Super Bowl aspirations in Case Keenum's pocket or basket. And you don't just go find a good quarterback on the street. Otherwise, they wouldn't be on the street. And the Browns are going to be good enough where they're not going to be able to draft high. So, for lack of a better term, you're stuck with Baker. I want to see Baker succeed. I need to see Baker succeed. The Browns need to see him succeed. And yes, on balance, his numbers were good today. And his offense put up 42 points. And he shouldn't have been asked to win the game late. But you know what? Crazy things happen in football. And he was asked to win the game late, even though he had done a great job to that point, considering the circumstances. And he came up small at the end. And Kevin Stefanski, I mean, I'm the first person who tells you when I think Kevin Stefanski has called a great game. I thought he called a great game against Kansas City in the opener. I put the blame for that final drive, not resulting in anything, more on Mayfield than anybody else, and certainly not on Stefanski. I thought Stefanski called a terrific game against the Chiefs. But I didn't like the play calling by Stefanski in these final two possessions. Up 1 and down 5. Late fourth quarter. What are you doing? Where's Nick Chubb? Why isn't Odell Beckham Jr. factoring into this? Why are we seeing dump-offs to handoffs to Kareem Hunt and short passes to David Njoku and Hollywood Higgins that aren't out of bounds? What are we doing? Where's the 2-minute drill? And the Browns look so good in 2-minute drills before halftime. Why don't they look nearly as good at the end of the games? So that's where I am right now. I'm running hot because I didn't like what I saw from Stefanski, from the Bake Show, and I didn't like the fact that I barely saw Odell Beckham Jr. Now, only Odell, unless you got the all-22 and you know exactly what plays were being called each time, only Odell knows what he was doing on each play in the final two possessions. But as far as I could tell, he was out there, and Mayfield never looked at him. So what a bitterly disappointing way for the game to end. I mean, it's one thing if the Chargers got up on the Browns, 47-10, and the Browns stormed all the way back and made it 47-42. You say, okay, they should never have gotten down that much, but what a comeback, valiant attempt. But this is a situation where you could have won the game with a reasonable expectation of execution. I mean, look at these leads. 20-13 at half, 27-13 third quarter, 27-21, 35-28, 42-35, 42-41. You got to win. You got to win the game. So that's why I'm really hacked off, is not only the loss, but the way in which the loss happened. All right, final segment coming up. I'll just do a quick recap of NFL Week 5 to this point with one game remaining as we tape the Chiefs and the Buffalo Bills.
This is Mike Voorhees, co-host of the Swingin' a Tribe MLB podcast. If you love Cleveland Indians baseball, then this is the pod for you. We've got you covered each week as we talk about all the games, breaking news, trades, the roster, all things Tribe. You're going to love it. Go Tribe.
Hey, I'm Jason.
And I'm Gary, and we love ball cards.
And if you love ball cards too, good news. You just found your new favorite podcast. From breaks to grading.
And from collecting to flipping, join us on the Ball Card Show.
The sports podcast for the sports collector.
Hey, it's Tito, host of the Premier Fantasy Podcast. Get all the news and analysis you need to dominate your fantasy league. I've been doing this as long as anybody in the business. I can help give you the edge in your leagues. It's the Premier Fantasy Podcast, part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
Looking for new insights on the Cleveland sports scene with a unique side of Cleveland sports history? Then you found the perfect podcast. I'm John Sable.
And I'm Scott Sable, and we're hosts of the Sable Brothers on the Baseline podcast, a podcast about Cleveland sports, but not your typical podcast about the land's sports teams. Join us as we embark on a journey of sharing a unique and historical side of Cleveland sports history with the help of some former Cleveland sports stars and other historical figures.
All right here on the Sable Brothers on the Baseline podcast, part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
Welcome back to the Dennis Maniloff Show, part of the Press Play Podcast Network. Producer for this show is Jordan Powell. And, of course, we think about the recovering Chase Smith. And talking about the Browns, their injury list a mile long against the Chargers. Not only, pregame, before the game, we already knew they were going to be without guys. Then game time scratched Jadeveon Clowney. Then guys were getting hurt during the game. Producer Chase Smith, the Press Play Podcast wizard Chase Smith, said that Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah was taken to the hospital with a throat contusion. So we wish him nothing but the best. And Joe Burrow of the Bengals, the quarterback, he had a throat contusion too. So scary stuff. It's a violent game. I can't even imagine how difficult it is to play. So, and it seemed like today there was a lot of carnage, but we hope that everybody who was injured heals as quickly as possible. NFL Week 5, even though there have been a lot of injuries, I think the product has been incredibly entertaining and a lot of fun. The Week 5, among the games I was keeping an eye on, the Squealers, Pittsburgh Steelers, 27-19 over the Broncos in Pittsburgh. I thought the Steelers would win. They got up big on Denver and had to hold them off. But the Steelers weren't nearly as bad as their 1-3 record, and I didn't think that the Broncos were as good as their 3-1 record. So I expected the Steelers to win, and they did. 27-19. The Buccaneers and Tom Brady destroyed the Dolphins 45-17. Brady 5 TDs. He's amazing. What else can you say that hasn't already been said? He's just an incredible player, and he just keeps on chugging. It wouldn't shock me at all if he plays till he's 50. The Cardinals moved to 5-0 with a 17-10 victory over the San Francisco 49ers in Arizona. Next up for the Cardinals, the Cleveland Browns. Yes, it's true. The Cardinals come to Cleveland with their 5-0 record for a 405 start. The Browns better be ready for Kyler Murray, who I submit is playing the best quarterback of anybody in the NFL at this moment, not named Tom Brady. Kyler Murray and the Cardinals 5-0 after the victory over the 49ers 17-10. Cowboys dismantle the Giants 44-20. No shock, especially given the Giants are losing players left and right, including Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley. The Bears and Justin Fields went to Vegas, as we mentioned, and beat the Raiders 20-9. Patriots rallied to beat a terrible Texans team on the road 25-22. Eagles down early but beat the Panthers on the road 21-18. Saints 33-22 over Washington. Vikings beat the Lions 19-17. Packers in a thriller over the Bengals. That was an early game, 25-22. Falcons in London 27-20 over the Jets. We're taping during Chiefs-Bills. And let me see. I think I got every other score. Of course, Thursday night was Rams-Seahawks. Monday is Colts at Ravens, and the Rams beat the Seahawks in Seattle on Thursday night. Russell Wilson injured his finger and is out 48 weeks. The last score that I did not read, I saved the worst for last. Tennessee Titans 37, Jacksonville Jaguars 19. Jaguars are 0-5, have lost 20 consecutive games. They opened last season 1-0 before dropping 15 in a row. Urban Meyer, with much fanfare, was hired in the offseason. And his first year with the Jaguars has been nightmarish. He is off to an 0-5 start. His team has been non-competitive for the most part, even though he would claim that it's been competitive. It hasn't. And there's controversy that's following Urban Meyer every day, both on the field decisions and off the field decisions by Herb. So I keep wondering, and I keep asking people on my radio show on News Radio WTM 1100 and 106.9 FM, do you think that Urban Meyer will achieve the magic number of 15 career NFL victories? Is he going to get to 15 wins as an NFL head coach? You say, why 15? Because that's Nick Saban's number. Nick Saban won 15 regular season games in 2 years with the Miami Dolphins before he returned to college. At one point when Herb was hired, as much as I've liked Herb and liked watching him coach in college, I thought, you know what? 15 is very reasonable as a target, even with a rebuilding Jaguars. Now, no. I'm wondering if Herb's even going to survive the season. 0-5 with no end in sight. And it'll be amazing to me if he gets to 15 victories as an NFL head coach. So the Jaguars lose again, and the wheels are completely off that wagon if they were ever on that wagon to begin with. All right. Thank you very much for listening. I wish, as I said at the top, I could have come to you in a better mood, but the Browns left me no choice by hacking and wheezing in the final minutes of their game at the Chargers and losing 47-42 in a game that, again, we don't say should have very much, but could have won. The Browns could have won that game and failed to do so. And teams that have Super Bowl aspirations need to win those types of games. And the Browns haven't done it. All right. Thank you very much. We'll talk to you soon.